Hello, and welcome to today's webcast, Leading a New Era of Innovation for Citizen Engagement. I'm Bill Rouse, Senior Fellow for the Center for Digital Government and an IT professor for Tulane University, as well as a former state and local IT government executive. I'm excited to serve as host for today's webcast, and I just want to say thank you for joining us. I know we're in for a great session over the next 30 minutes. So with that, let's jump right into it and hear from our expert speakers. John, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes. If you could tell us a little about these new technologies and how the cloud plays a vital role in the digital transformation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Bill. And first of all, I want to thank AWS for sponsoring this webinar. It's great to be able to speak with you all today about this. So let me set the stage a little bit and give a quick 30-second overview on the origin story of Iternal Technologies. So initially, about a decade ago, I actually had a passion for filmmaking. And I ended up founding what became the top-rated corporate film production company in Austin. And in that time, one of the things that was a big challenge that I saw both in the enterprise commercial space as well as the public sector is that the time that it took and the cost associated with producing high quality video content was enormous. And the issue is, as messages constantly evolve and change over time, whether it's a policy change or some new communication avenue needs to be implemented, those videos rapidly become out of date. And that's a costly and expensive time sink. So ultimately, the kind of birth idea behind Iternal Technologies was trying to solve that challenge. And ultimately, what we discovered is if we're able to break down content, whether it's text, slides, audio, or video communications, into modular components and build a software technology around both the automation and assembly of that content, we could make agile, more efficient, more cost-effective communications that could scale at an enterprise scale and reach employees or citizens pretty much any way that's needed across any foreign language. So ultimately, that was what was the birth idea behind Iternal. And over time, it's grown into being a lot more than that. Today, we can pretty much automate, curate, and assemble any major media format of information that you can think of, whether that's text, slides, audio, video, beautiful graphic design brochures, email, social media posts, you name it. Either we can do it today or we will be able to do it soon. And so looking at the public sector and how this technology is really shifting the thinking model for how government agencies communicate and interact with their citizens, it's very significant. There's a huge cost savings opportunity to extend the budgets of these organizations and get more out of that money to engage more effectively on a personalized level with each individual citizen based on their needs and specific desires, as well as improving the overall experience that can be delivered. So for the public sector specifically, that's just one element of what we do. But the other things that Iternal is really capable of delivering massive transformation in, beyond just modernizing citizen engagement, is all around the acceleration of both collaboration as well as data sharing. So being able to link different parties and different parts of the government together to collaborate on messaging and key critical information in a timely fashion, as well as improving the access and security governance around that data. And ultimately, this really leads to the improvement and better achievement of whatever the key strategic objectives are. So we've got a couple slides here to take you through at a high level the technology. So this first one here is just really illustrating the process flow behind how Iternal works. So at a high level, there are really two primary methods through which you can generate, automate, and make your content agile. The first one is through human interaction. So that could be something like an end user citizen opening up a mobile application on their phone, getting ready to go through, say, airport security, for example. Right? They could answer a series of questions. Maybe they only speak Japanese, or they have a medical device that's implanted for a pacemaker. They can answer questions associated with those different pieces of input. And based on their answers, our technology can curate the necessary pieces of information to communicate to that individual citizen or traveler in a matter of seconds in whatever media format is needed, whether that's a video spoken in Japanese explaining how to go through airport security and flag that you have a medical device, or some other type of interaction. The other cool thing that we can do is we can actually programmatically generate this content. And that's one of the things that's been very exciting in terms of how we're collaborating with AWS to scale this across the enterprise. Through our technology, we're actually able to feed in a data set and process through a logic engine and AI all of these different personalization elements of content at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of pieces of content scale. So the result is you can literally generate millions of pieces of hyper-personalized content, messaging specific key pieces of information to an individual citizen or traveler in a matter of minutes. And we can do that across any major media format in all foreign languages. And of course, that content could be delivered through any traditional mechanism. So one of the powers of our system is really the concept through our collaboration with AWS of being able to distribute that information very easily and effectively. So we can send it to an AWS S3 bucket so that it can be distributed by other means, or it could be sent out via text messages or interface with any existing citizen engagement platforms that may be present. So there's a lot of flexibility and emphasis put on that. Next slide here, just to give you a little bit of an illustration on the user interface. The cool thing about our technology is it's actually very easy to set up and deploy rapidly. We're not talking about 6, 12, or 18-month implementation cycles. In many cases, we're able to spin up a proof of concept and proof of value in less than 14 days. And with a slight amount of customization, more configuration than anything else, being able to create highly engaging and workflows that ultimately meet the end user strategic objectives. So there are a lot of really powerful use cases for this technology. And I think that this slide, talking about the AWS services that we use, as well as our key partners and the ultimate solutions that our technology is able to deliver, really sums this up very well. So we are 100% AWS native. We have been from the founding of the company. And that was a strategic decision that our CTO and I made when looking at the scalability of our platform. And the partnership with AWS has been absolutely tremendous. They've helped us take our technology and really meet the enterprise security, compliance, and scalability requirements that we need to be able to meet both our commercial and public sector expectations. And so being able to leverage that knowledge and expertise really anytime that we need it based on certain opportunities that may come up has been hugely effective. Being able to pick up the phone and call somebody to talk about how we can meet these specific requirements for a public sector need or these specific requirements from an enterprise security standpoint has been very helpful. And so, looking beyond just the infrastructure, though, AWS has been a partner in a lot of other ways too, which includes co-selling. And so, being able to leverage and collaborate on delivering highly effective results for the end customer, leveraging the best of what AWS is able to bring to the table, as well as what our technology is able to bring from a capability standpoint, has really resulted in delivering a better end customer experience, which is ultimately what it's all about. NVIDIA is another one of our key strategic partners, and we've actually been working with them to scale the concept of digital humans, avatars, to more effectively communicate in a rapid fashion in any foreign language globally. So if you think about the traditional content creation pipeline that exists today, where you actually have to have a physical actor come in, sit down in front of the camera, record as many of these clips to communicate as you can, that's a time and cost expensive process. And so what we're actually doing with NVIDIA that's really cool is we're actually building a capability to have those digital humans synthesized as avatars using the Omniverse. And so being able to combine that with the scalability of rendering that AWS from an infrastructure, cloud, and GPU standpoint is able to bring we're very excited about that, and there will be more information coming on that one here soon. From a hardware perspective, we've also been able to work with both AMD and AWS to optimize the back-end costs associated with scaling our services. So for some of the media-intensive tasks that we've needed to generate content for, like beautiful graphic design brochures, we've actually been able to work with AWS and AMD to bring those onto AMD hardware, which has ultimately reduced our cost by about 10%, which is really great from a scalability standpoint. Looking at languages, Lionbridge is one of the leading translation providers globally. And through a combination of technical development, where we've worked with AWS to build a translation application that's powered by Lionbridge, we're able to bring over 300 unique language locales to our customers so that they can scale their communications globally and meet international needs for public sector engagement. So looking at how we're talking to not only people who live locally in the United States who may speak multiple languages, but as people from other nations travel and visit to the United States, being able to communicate effective policies, procedures, and other notifications is also critically important. And then, of course, we have to give a shout out to Carahsoft and say thank you for the ability to rapidly deliver on the procurement standpoint. We're part of 8 contract vehicles, which make procurement from a public sector standpoint very efficient. So ultimately, between the technology that we've been able to build in-house, as well as the collaboration with our great partners, there are a lot of exciting technology solutions that are available today, as well as we will be announcing soon to really impact the future of citizen engagement. So I'll turn it back over to you, Bill.
All right, thank you, John. That was outstanding. I was taking some notes as you were speaking. I've got a few questions for you that I'll ask in just a few minutes. It was exciting to learn about all you've created with this valuable service, but especially your partnership with AWS, how you can leverage their enterprise tools like AI and cloud. So speaking of questions, we're starting to get some great questions from our audience members. Please keep those coming. We want to hear from you. We got some time dedicated towards the end of the webinar to address your questions. So yes, please send in your questions as you have, and we'll address those. So let's start off with our discussion. Before we get to our audience questions, I've got a few questions first. So Tony, I want to start with you. Looking at your experience with AWS, and you've seen the uptick in the use cases for cloud in state and local government. I remember my time in state and local government, I was really pushing cloud, and I was with a legislative body doing a presentation, and someone said, "I understand what you're doing. That makes sense, as long as that cloud is hovering above our state, within our state borders." So there was a little bit of resistance there. And I did my dissertation research under the adoption, the factors that influence the adoption of cloud in state and local government. And my research determined that both the number one limiter and the number one benefit to cloud as perceived by state and local government was the same. It was cost. The number one reason state and local government wanted to go to cloud was cost. The number one limiter or barrier was cost. So now the landscape has changed, especially with the pandemic, as I mentioned. So I would like to hear from you now in this new landscape. Why is there still resistance, or is there still resistance, and what are the top barriers of innovation in the cloud that you're seeing?
Well, thanks for the question, Bill and John. Terrific presentation. Always a pleasure to partner with your company, and we look forward to seeing the innovations yet to come. In terms of the innovation and going into the cloud, especially from our state and local partners, of which I've had the last 4 years of experience working with them, besides the normal cost factors which you cite, which are long and ongoing, and the issues of deprecating old hardware in data centers, it really comes down to 2 recent factors that we see now driving innovation. The biggest one is security. As we've seen from just before the pandemic and continuing through the pandemic, security is a big topic, especially if you're trying to support remote workforces, which is becoming more of the norm, or if you're dealing with, again, antiquated hardware and antiquated processes. So ensuring security, and as John mentioned, compliance is really paramount to talking about innovation in the cloud. And so when you're presented with 2 options, are you going to improve the security posture on antiquated hardware, or are you going to move your workloads to more secure platforms that are already integrated into the cloud and provide better flexibility, I think the answer is obvious, which is you want to go to the cloud as quickly as possible. And then that goes to the second part of the answer, if I may, just to keep it brief for our presentation here, which is the velocity of code is another paramount issue as well. A lot of our partners and customers, frankly, have a difficult time assessing and really answering the question, how long does it take for my code or my IP, the basis of my product, to go from an idea in our offices to in the cloud or even on-prem? And so the cloud really helps answer that question and really improve the velocity of that code. And so I think in a nutshell, to sum it up, besides performance and other factors, which we could get into in a longer conversation, perhaps over a beer or two, I would say that for the most part, security is paramount in terms of the product design issue, and in terms of the technology and the IP debt issue, velocity, and getting that code to the cloud as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I
can't agree more with your security comment, especially pre-pandemic. There was the mindset, it was an antiquated mindset that we can't go to the cloud because it isn't as secure. But I think we've learned now that it's the cloud can not only be as secure, but it's more secure than it would be if you had to put those same controls under an on-prem technology. So, John, back to you real quick. Your presentation was outstanding, especially the future of citizen engagement, of how things we can do. You said things like digital humans and avatars and all this kind of cool stuff that state and local gov is starting to get into. So, let me ask you, what do you see the future of citizen engagement going?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that what we're starting to see with our technology in particular, as well as just industry trends in general, is a lot of the things that were pioneered in the commercial space are now, like you said, starting to make their way into the public sector. And in some cases, even the public sector is adopting it more quickly because of the scale that it's able to deliver. So specifically around citizen engagement, I think it really comes down to one key word, and that's personalization, right? One size fits all doesn't work for an employee or any human being for that matter, right? And so being able to deliver the right information to the right person at the right time in the right language is going to be critical for the future of citizen engagement. And ultimately, I think that whether it's adopting a technology like ours or others that are out there on the market, making that a more personalized experience in a way that, like Tony said, is secure, compliant, and scalable is going to be critical. And just to jump off of Tony's point there for a moment, what he said about AWS from a security and velocity standpoint has absolutely been the experience that we've had as well. This year alone, we're going to be launching 5 new technologies, and that's only been made possible through our ability to rapidly innovate and collaborate with AWS and get those in a enterprise scalable manner very quickly.
So let's stay on that theme of collaboration. So Tony, your second part of your answer previously, you mentioned the speed to innovation. We got this idea of how to take it to market and how to take it from innovation to actually production. So let me ask you, how does AWS collaborate with partners to deliver these new innovations that come to mind?
We really focus on 3 main areas. And if I may maybe further define the word partners just for a second, we have ISV partners, which we would call Iternal, and then Iternal may bring in a development partner as well. So we have 2 partners we have to worry about in this conversation, right? We have the development partner that may be assisting our direct partner, our customer, if you will, Iternal, in other words, John. And so when we think about how do we collaborate with both sets of partners, the answer is sort of the same, which is how do we help our partners market, build, and sell their products on AWS? And our mantra in this company, in AWS and our culture, is as long as John is successful, we're successful. So we want to build a business model through our collaboration where we can excel on security, excel on scalability, on performance, on compliance. We want to help John be successful because ultimately, if John is successful and his company grows, then AWS grows with him. And that's the level of investment and collaboration that we look for when we work with our partners. We try to seek and search out partnerships that are co-beneficial with one another. We don't try to see John as just an endpoint to sell services, but we want to ask the questions and say, how do you plan to use the service? Is this service too expensive for you? Are there cheaper alternatives? Are there more secure alternatives? Are there more performant alternatives? I think that's where is the relationship with AWS and collaboration is key. Is we welcome those conversations. We welcome the tight feedback loop that we have with our customers. And frankly, that's how my business team and my program works with John is we challenge him as much as he wants to challenge us. And I think that level of collaboration really spawns, as John mentioned, the velocity to the cloud, a rapid development of products, deployment of products, if I may, in a year time span. And we look forward to seeing the success that John's going to bring to the market in the space that he's working in.
So, John, let me turn it back over to you. We've been talking about this partnership and all the great things that you're doing. So what's next for Iternal? And how can people stay up to date with what you're releasing? Because your partners are going to release some of these products, and also our state and local gov audience is interested as well. So what's next, and how can everybody stay up to date with what's going on?
So there's a lot that's coming next, which is very exciting. And I think that the velocity that we've been able to achieve from a development standpoint has been really tremendous. We have a great team of developers all in-house working very closely with AWS to optimize our technology and get it out to market as quickly as possible. And so the best way to stay up to date on what we're doing would be to follow us on LinkedIn. We're going to be putting a lot of announcements out there on these new technologies that we're releasing. And ultimately, at a high level, they're all focused around the concept of that personalization for citizen engagement, as well as the commercial elements as well. And that's talking about digital avatar capabilities, it's audio communications, it's scaling that across 300 language locales using AI and machine learning. So there are a lot of exciting things coming up regarding those.
Well, I did say I wanted to get some questions from our audience, so I want to be sure we have some time for that. So, Tony, this one I think is more directed towards you. We've got a lot of questions about building a business and innovating, since this has been our theme today. So the question is from our audience members is, how should both the GovTech audience and ISVs be working with their technology partner to build a business and to innovate?
I think in 2022, regardless of AWS, if you're sitting in a room with a technology partner, you got to ask three basic questions. The first one is, what are you going to do to help me build a more secure platform wherever I happen to end up? That should be the first question that should be asked. The second question is, how fast are you going to help me get to this platform, if I may say so? So in other words, are you going to remove barriers to entry for me to get into the cloud or into whatever technology you're working in? The third one, frankly, is a cost consideration, which is, are there alternatives to what you're providing for me? Are you able to lower the cost to help me grow my margins or to make sure that I have a healthy cost of goods sold? That's a very important metric that we track. And if you're not asking those questions, I would encourage anyone working with a technology provider in this day and age to ask those questions and start there. And of course, there's dozens of other questions that ought to be asked. But to answer your question, those are the top three that come to my mind.
So I think we've got time for one more audience question, and this is a techie one. So I'm going to throw it towards John here. So your solution, does it need a GPU?
Some of them do, yes. So it really depends on what we're talking about. There are a lot of different technologies that we're leveraging, both on the CPU compute side as well as the GPU, depending on the specific media format. So as we're looking at things like audio or video or generating these digital avatars, it's very much around the GPU. And then, of course, text processing is much more database and CPU driven than anything else. So it just depends on the solution. But the nice thing about our partnership with AWS is that, we can go to one-stop shop for this stuff and get pretty much everything that we need to a large extent from one solution provider, which has been terrific.
Well, I want to be respectful of our time commitment, so unfortunately we have to wrap it up here. This has been a great conversation. We could have kept talking about this subject for hours. But in closing, I would like to thank both John and Tony for sharing your expert insights on today's webcast. And also a big thank you goes out to our sponsor, Amazon Web Services, for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And most importantly, thank you to our audience for spending your valuable time with us.